Sylvia, how do you look at these Nvidia results in terms of how it relates to the broader tech space that you invest in?
Yeah, I mean, I would carry on that positive sentiment that you just had here with Dan. I actually think that the results are great, right? And what happens is you have these lofty expectations, and so it's hard to beat lofty expectations. But they did give you that, extra 2% in either direction, and they're within the range of the outlook for Q4. But if Nvidia is doing quite well, it's also a supplier to a lot of the hyperscalers, right? Yes. And so you kind of have to think that if their orders are ramping up and if their profits and revenues are ramping up, that bodes well for the Mag 7 that are also invested in this space. So I do think it helps positive sentiment in the tech space.
In general, is Jensen Huang being conservative when he gives this forecast? We kind of go on about this plus or minus 2%, but it's preventing people from seeing this as a blockbuster that they had expected to, because Nvidia has trained them to expect bigger and better things each time.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard when you're at the top and every year you're doubling sales amounts, right? And you have this massive revenue growth. Like if you look at the compounded annual growth rate expectation for the S&P 500, it's like 5.7% sales, 13% on revenues. For Nvidia, it's 40% on both, right? Mm-hmm. So they have these high and lofty expectations, and I think that if he starts to level set a little bit, that'll ease us into the fact that perhaps this kind of tames down as we go forward. I think AI is in its infancy for sure, but it's really hard to expect a company to double every 2 years.
So we're hearing that Blackwell will exceed supply for several quarters into full fiscal year 2026, but we're not seeing ramp until next quarter. Yeah. What more can Jensen give this market? I mean, it's obviously the dominant player, and the stock is being sold off after hours.
Right, and this is kind of what I wanted to hear, and what I want to hear on the call is that the demand is so high that we're running out, and we're going to have to come up with more chips, but that the demand is clearly there, right? And then there's a plan for the supply chain. So I think this is kind of how the market has become, right? We just expect these lights out types of results from earnings, but then we take a step back. A couple of days go by and the stock rallies because investors realize, wow, this company just blew through their earnings expectations.
There has got to be concern, not just at Nvidia headquarters, but at Defiance headquarters about Donald Trump and the tariff issue and how much that impacts Nvidia, because after all, if it impacts Nvidia, it impacts the whole S&P 500.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out, because that might be balanced with deregulation and taxes, right? So maybe what you lose on one side, you gain on the other. So we'll kind of have to wait and see. And it's not clear to us whether or not that's more of a negotiation tactic versus, a hard line of a tariff that they're actually going to employ on these semiconductor companies. I think at the end of the day, I think Donald Trump likes a good market, right? And I don't think that we're going to have as taxing of a policy as we expect there. But again, I think it's the deregulation and the taxes will offset some of the inflation issues, the supply chain issues, and the tariffs. So
bottom line, a Trump administration is good news for Nvidia, and I ask this because they rely on TSMC to do a lot of their manufacturing of chips. Yeah. And TSMC is caught in this awkward situation, with the manufacturing plants in Taiwan and. President-elect Trump making clear that he doesn't think the U.S. should rush to Taiwan's aid if China were to attack the island.
Right, and none of this sounds particularly good, I think, but overall, I do think that it's going to be about deregulation and taxes, and I just think he's going to walk a fine line with the strong words during the campaign and what actually gets, put into play here. So I don't think that it'll...
Watch what he does, not what he says.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Sylvia, what's a good valuation for Nvidia? Well, I mean, it feels like it's been in price discovery since the beginning. When there was a 10-for-1 split and we crossed $1,000, and then obviously that $100. Now we're at 140, headed for 150. Right. Where does it stop? What is it? What is a correct valuation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really hard question to answer, because I think that until they stop beating earnings expectations and they stop having this, hyperbolic growth, then we can say that the stock should and deserves to continue to rise, right? I mean, the amount of growth in the price of the stock after the split is just remarkable. I wouldn't be surprised if the stock doubled in the next couple of years, but they have to keep up. And this is based on a lot of, Blackwell and no tariffs and things like this. But I think if they keep up on earnings expectations, then then it's it's to the moon. I mean, they're the number one supplier of chips to hyperscalers, to quantum computing, to supercomputing, to data centers. I mean, it's literally their game right now. And of course, people will catch up eventually, but I think that they're too far away.
When we say people will catch up, we're talking about what, AMD, Broadcom?
I think it could be AMD and Broadcom, but I also think it could be the companies themselves, right? Maybe it's Microsoft, maybe it's Google, maybe it's Apple. So, but
that have made clear that they want their own supply chain and bring it in-house.
Exactly. Eventually they figure it out, but they haven't, thus far. So I think that Nvidia is in a good spot.